In all of these instances, it appears as if the suspect the person has produced some sort of weapon.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've noticed that over the years in your experience that could be, driving these numbers up? Last year there were, I think 17.
It's hard to tell. That the officer-involved shootings, they sometimes are high and sometimes are low. But it's all dependent upon how, when we respond to these calls, how the subject that we're dealing with approaches in those situations. And in the last three, which is concerning, the officers are all getting there, responding to calls for service. And when they get there, there are firearms in play. And listen, like you probably heard me say it the other night. When that kind of stuff happens, our officers are not gonna hesitate. They're gonna do what they have to do to defend themselves and to defend the lives of the people of this community. And unfortunately, that's had to happen the last three times. But I'm glad the officers are going home safely and taking care of themselves. Because let's face it, these are all young human beings that are doing a really tough job, Tarek. It's not easy. And it's gotten harder over the years because of all the dynamics involved. And don't necessarily want to do that, don't want that to happen, because that means someone's life's in danger. It could be yours or it could be the police officers. And we just act accordingly. We act quickly, decisively, and we're going to do that. If you bring out a gun in a situation where we're dealing with a call for service, that's going to happen more times than not.
In those situations where perhaps a gun wasn't produced in a manner, is there anything that the agency's doing differently that hasn't been done to reduce those numbers of police-involved shootings? And I don't know what that looks like. Is that de-escalation techniques? But I know there's training at the same time that police officers.
It's really hard. I mean, how do you de-escalate when you drive up on a scene and there's a guy holding a gun? How do you de-escalate when you're sitting down conducting surveillance because you were called to a neighborhood, called to a community about a zero, which is an armed person in drugs, usually a drug dealer, an armed drug dealer? How do you fix that? How do you, other than go there, address the issue that the community is calling us about, and then out of the blue, a guy shows up behind you holding a gun in his hand? And it's perfectly fine for people to have guns. It really is. The problem is, if I were to take this gun out, God forbid, I wouldn't do that. But if I were to take this gun out because I'm allowed to carry it and point it at you, I've committed an aggravated assault. It's not okay. Because then I put your life in a position where, and if you're a carrier yourself, you're going to naturally, reasonably, you're going to fight back. Citizens are allowed to do that, and of course the police will.
When it comes to like mental health or nonviolent offenders, has the training changed at all in as far as responding to incidents where non-lethal force would be ideal, but maybe not?
Well, there's a lot of training. And we have our co-responder program, which is a big deal for us. But here's a problem. You guys may have heard me say that these aren't games. That when we respond to these calls, these are not games. We're going there because there's a life-threatening situation. And if you're a co-responder, and say the undersheriff is driving, and you guys are partnered up, and we hear that there's a call where there's a zero involved or a handgun involved, we are not going to put any civilian in that type of situation. We're going to go and we're going to try to talk. In most cases, we try to talk people down and talk people out of these type of situations. Unfortunately, more times than not, it turns out that the crisis that they're in has continued to the point where they're going to get violent. And if they make those violent, they do something with a knife or with a gun, chances are it's going to end up in a situation like that. And we work really hard, and we try to make sure we don't, when we don't have to, but unfortunately, a lot of these situations have put us in that position.
Would you support like any kind of independent civilian oversight or citizen review?
No, I'm going to tell you why I won't. One, it's illegal in the state of Florida now. Two, there's oversight. Like, I have the final say-so on absolutely nothing. There's a state attorney in place, elected by the people of the 4th Judicial Circuit, very smart lady, great legal mind, who makes every decision, whether it's prosecuted or not, whether we're going to prosecute a case or not, and whether I like it or not. I may disagree. There's been homicide cases when I worked in homicide, where we take a case there and we feel like it's prosecutable, and they say no. she's the final say-so in those type situations. There's a body that's involved in most of these cases. If that individual were to die on scene or die because of our actions, that body is a property of the medical examiner's office. That's a piece of evidence that they deal with. We don't collect them. We don't even touch them. So there's built-in checks and balances all the way to the Attorney General of Florida, the governor if he needs to get involved, and the United States Attorney's Office. So it's not a situation where we're just acting on our own and making a final decision. Decisions go beyond me. I just like to inform the public of what we have, what I see, but the investigation part is not over, not until the state attorney makes a decision. And then that decision is binding.
Right. I mean, because there are people in the community who are concerned about policing police, but what you're saying is it's much bigger than just the...
Oh, it's huge. There's much more involved in that. And I know that a lot of people feel like that's the case, but there are people out there, Tarek, that I'll never be able to convince any differently. But I will be honest always, because I have somebody else that I have to answer to when it's all said and done. I've been given the opportunity to sit in this seat because one, the good Lord's given me the opportunity to sit in this seat. If I abuse the office, or if I misuse the office, or if I misuse people, I'm more concerned about that than anything else. And then there's the public that I answer to, who hired me and put me in this position to make sure that we're doing things the right way, which is why I always try to come out, whether pre-produced or not. I saw that. Whether pre-produced or not, I always try to put out a professional presentation about what's taking place in the agency and what's happened. Sometimes it's in the form of a media release, but the big ones, Florida, Georgia, some of the other things we put out because we want people to see step by step why decisions are made and how we come to the conclusions that we come to.
I do want to get into some of the successes. You guys are kind of like, your agency has grown, and I know that you put people into place, but before we go there, I do want to ask you about this incident with Mark Crawford, and I do understand the legalities.
Yep.
Based on the evidence, the state attorney's office came back and said, beyond a reasonable doubt, the use of deadly force was justifiable. For those who don't, this is in the internal investigation phase now.
Yes, it's under administrative review right now.
Administrative review. So what does that mean? Can you walk us through what that, for the average person who's out there,
I'll be glad to.
Sees an officer, fires a gun.
I'll be glad to.
Yeah.
So the very first step in the process, and I don't think people know this, if we use force and someone dies as a result of the force that we use, it's an active, open homicide investigation. Not a murder investigation necessarily, but an active homicide investigation where you start at the very top, which is, did we violate criminal law? Did we violate the Florida statutes in using force on that individual? We cannot mix those two investigations. Legally, we're binding. Legally, we can't mix those those investigations. So what we do is we start at the very top. We start the criminal process, right? And we collect evidence. We do bullet counts. We do all that stuff. We do whether the officer has an officer bill of rights, so they can choose whether they want to make a statement or not. But all that goes into place. We package all that information up, and then we pass that information on to the state attorney's office, who is there at the scene that night, watching as we watching body cam video, listening to the briefings that we get from the cold case officers. But their decision-making process is totally independent and separate of ours. All right, once that's completely said and done, like let's say Crawford, for example, then it comes back to us, since there's no criminal charges, and we begin the investigative or administrative review process, which lasts up to 180 days. And they'll make a determination on what they saw. It'll run its way up through the undersheriff. Undersheriff will inform me of their findings. I'll take a look at the summaries, and then we'll make a decision on whether we agree with their findings or not.
For those who don't know what being reassigned to teleserve is, some might say that that's just a slap on the wrist. What is it for a police officer? What kind of penalty is that to go from the streets to teleserve?
So it depends. It depends on if it's completely finished. Example, let me give you the best example. We had a situation years ago when Mike was sheriff. There was a young man, officer, who came to work in a city vehicle, drunk, right? Mike fired him. Mike wanted him gone. Took it to a civil review board, which is 5 civilians, not picked by the police. Took it to civilian review board. They said his termination was manifestly unjust and we had to give him his job back. It's crazy, 3 times over the legal limit. We're tougher on the people here that violate rules and laws than probably those boards are. Because the undersheriff has to go sit in front of that board and testify as to why we wanted to fire someone. And if they don't like it, and if they say that it's manifestly unjust, their decision is binding upon us to hold on to that police officer. Then we get an officer back like that, what do? Do we put him in a police car and let him drive around when he showed us that he's driven on duty, drunk? Or do we sit him in teleserve and not let him patrol on our streets anymore? So that's what we did until he left. That's what teleserve is.
So among officers, it is a demeaning, it's a
Won't call it demeaning. It won't call it demeaning, but what we will call it is a way to deal with situations that we don't feel comfortable putting a person back on the street. Well, sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's injuries. Sometimes officers get injured in the line of duty. They may break a leg or break an ankle or something, and they have to go to teleserve and do that. But in a situation where we have something like that happen, yes, we will do that, and I will do that today. I will do that if there's something that we feel is unsafe to be on the streets of Jacksonville. We will sit that person in teleserve until they decide they don't want to work anymore, or let them run their time out.
So what would you say to those people in the community who feel that this case has the appearance of, preferential treatment for a high-ranking officer, or feel as if it reinforces a double standard for policing? And we're talking about the Crawford case.
It's difficult to convince that crowd that that's not the case, right? But the final decision and the authority for the decision-making on prosecution lies with the state attorney. That's what I would say. And whether I like it or not, that's where it is. But every case, we have homicide cases, and I use that as an example because we have probable cause for cases that we haven't arrested on because we have to reach a certain threshold before we can get that case to a trial. Because ethically, the state has to believe they can win that case before they'll take that case to trial. It takes a long time. Sometimes it takes a year. Sometimes it takes 2 years. Those are very long. Crawford's was one of those type situations because now you have to determine on whether or not what he did was reasonable or in his mind what he was thinking. And that's the difficulty. So preferential treatment, no. I would tell you that if there's someone that does something here and we can prove that they did it wrong, I want to get rid of them because I want the city and this county to have the very best police department, sheriff's office that they deserve. I don't play with it. It's not a joke to me. It's not playing with numbers or trying to hide, none of that. Because I'm willing to sit down and talk to anyone at any time about anything so I can get the message across that we don't want bad police officers working here. I'm not calling Crawford bad. Maybe he made a mistake, but maybe he felt like his life was in danger. That's all it is, and the state attorney made her decision. I respect her decision. She's a very smart lawyer. I've known her for a very long time, but she doesn't consult me on these things. We don't have conversations on the phone about what she's going to do in a situation.
Yeah, that's been alleged on social media.
Oh, of course. Social media alleges a lot of stuff, but it's not the case. She doesn't need me to make legal decisions. It's just not part of the process.
This seems like a natural segue. But speaking of media, your agency has invested in making sure that you're able to communicate with the public. What are you hoping comes out of this investment?
Oh man, it's already paying huge dividends. I can show you this. Analytics from social media platforms for the year 2025. Facebook, 154.8 million views. What that means is we're getting our message out and where people are seeing us. And you know what I get, Tarek, around the community? I get, thank you for your transparency, because they've never seen it before. Not boasting, but I knew it's very important for us to be able to do that and focus on getting information to the public. You guys can't run everything. So we're going to run as much as we can and put as much as we can out so people have a chance to see it. And see, there's a lot of great things that go on here. Much greater than the negative. Way, way more than the negative. So we've had YouTubers come from Peter Santinello, Tommy G, from Turkey, from just all over the place because they're interested in the professionalism of this agency and how we do things. So I wanted to get good people. We're police. We know how to answer calls for service. and we're still not perfect. Well, we don't know how to do what you do, right? So we hire someone that knows how to do what you do to get them here to help us get information out. But that's just not it. 2.2 million content interactions. That's up 312%. The other platforms, that's just Facebook. The other platforms, the Reels, 51 million views.
Do you think that the agency was maybe misperceived in the past, and now you're getting the opportunity to, well, not the agency, but just police in general?
I think the police department, and we're just normal human beings. I can't say that enough. We're just normal people that come, volunteer to do a job, to try to make our city the best city that it can be. I live here. I'm going to retire here. I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life. So I think it's misperceived. I think there's a runaway narrative sometimes, and I wanted to combat that because I want to tell the truth about what it's really like. And I want to tell people, I want people to really see, like when we went out with Peter Santinello, that wasn't a show. That we do that every Thursday. That's something that we do trying to save lives in our community.
But there are realities, and not within your agency, but there are realities. Like the worst case that I could think of was the Ahmaud Arbery case. You know, where the young man was running and the police report said something completely different. So there is that, you know, there are those instances, I think, that can kind of drive,
I can't really comment on that. And if you you'll notice this.
I just brought that up.
Yeah, you'll notice this about me. I don't normally talk about stuff that I don't have firsthand knowledge about.
Gotcha, it's fine. Let's stay on the script here.
Let's go ahead.
All right.
Gotcha.
All right. So let's just talk about Officer Bowers. And that was one other case we didn't get the opportunity to speak with you about.
Right.
What does this level 1 reprimand look like for officers?
It goes in their file, and it tells you that they've been in violation. It's a pretty serious reprimand. It goes in your file and tells you that he was guilty of failing to conform to work standards by not writing something down in his report. That's what it is. He was not guilty of excessive use of force. He was not guilty of any type of crime. And it's really hard for people to understand what it's like to be on a traffic stop on the side of the road, not knowing whether that person is going to shoot you, stab you, or do anything else like that, and try to balance all that through a conversation on the side of the road. But it goes in his file for 5 years. And everyone, when he applies for another job, trying to go do something different, that reprimand is going to be there.
So,
and progressively, what happens is it starts a progressive discipline process, and it goes up from there.
Okay. And how do you feel about a slap being a distraction technique?
I think it's perfectly reasonable, 100%. Unless you've been out there on a traffic stop and you understand what it's like for a bullet to whiz by your head or someone to try to stab you, you can't get it. And I understand that. I do understand. I understand people will never understand that part of it. But just last night in Greenville, South Carolina, officers sitting down and writing a police report. Car drives up beside him, fires incendiary shots into his car. Now he's seriously injured, but no one's really appalled by that. You know, I don't see the social media traction about that kind of stuff. Or my friend Malik Darragad, who is permanently wheelchair bound, and 6 other officers that have been shot since they've been here, or another officer that went to stop a shoplifter from Walmart, which is her responsibility, and he strikes her in the face several times, incapacitating her. So at some point you have to make a decision on whether or not this is a situation where I'm going to have to use a level of force to get the person to comply and make sure that he couldn't reach down on that floorboard and grab that butcher knife that was that big. Because how do you know?
Gotcha.
You don't know.
I'm almost, I know we're running close on time here. We've received emails from people in the community.
Yep.
They're concerned that when police reports don't match what happened, some think it's done to hide an action that the officer knows is wrong.
Yep.
In this situation, it wasn't disclosed by the officer that.
Right.
Is this fair or not fair?
Is it fair for people to feel that way, that he's trying to hide something?
Correct.
I'm sure that it's reasonable for them to say that they feel like he's trying to hide something, but I would say this: why write down the rest of it? He's wearing a body cam. So I don't think it was intentional. I think in his mind he thought I used a strike, and the other strikes that they wrote down was a miscalculation on his part. He's being punished for it, disciplined.
Okay. So let's talk about the future.
Yes, sir.
Are you running for re-election?
Yeah, I'm all in.
As sheriff, or are you considering another office?
No, sheriff. I want to be the sheriff here. I like the job. I love my job. I love doing what I do. I love the chance to get out and talk to people and deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with and seeing the crime drop in Jacksonville, which when I go out, go to Publix or go to any place in this community, and I hear people say, thank you for what you guys are doing, and I feel safe in Jacksonville for the first time in a very long time. Or I hear someone say, we moved out of Jacksonville, but we're coming back. That's what you do it for. That's a rewarding part. And then I can go share that with the men and women of the agency, because when it comes down to it, these are the ones that are doing the tough work. These are the ones that are doing the job. So between them, between our transparency, between the way the murder rate has dropped in Jacksonville, even though we were up slightly from last year, largely because huge domestics, which was really weird. I like the direction we're going. And I'm super proud that the people feel like they're getting a chance to see what goes on within the agency.
There's a lot going on in the world.
There is.
ICE is one of the topics that people are talking about. How do you feel about federal officers with their faces covered? There's a push for them to get their faces uncovered so the public knows who they're dealing with.
I don't think under normal circumstances that would be the case. But they're under siege for doing a job for enforcing federal law. They're literally under siege. There are certain organizations that are following them, trying to dox them, trying to get people to go to their homes to cause them harm. So I don't have a negative thought about it. I think they should do it. I think some of our undercover officers here, when they go do enforcement actions after they've done a long undercover investigation, they wear masks on their face because they can't be divulged. I think for their safety, they're doing what's necessary. Because unfortunately, it's not very popular, but they are a federal law enforcement agency. They're enforcing federal law. And when people don't like it, you try to do things that are going to create issues for them and their families. Again, these are people with families, with homes. They're not machines. I know that somehow that's how they get presented, or we get presented. We're not machines. We're people. You can probably hear it right now. I'm dealing with a head cold, because like normal people. They're normal people and they want to protect themselves. So I don't have a problem with it at all. And it's very, very partisan, what it is. It's very political, is what it is.
Right. But can you see the other side where people would want to know, establishing a connection? Like, I'm able to see your face. I'm able to, see reaction and emotion. It's tough to see that, almost impossible when somebody's face is shown.
So if I have to weigh it, the lives of the families and the federal officers that are doing the job or making people comfortable, I'm siding on the side of the lives. I want them to be safe, to do what they do, so that now when they go home and they have to go out, not everyone's targeting them or trying to do something to them because of what they do and what they represent. You know what they represent? Enforcing the laws that are put in place by the people of this nation, which that's what I do. I enforce the laws, partnership with the federal government, state, and local. Whether I agree with the laws have nothing to do with them being enforced or not. That's my job, and that's my duty as a sheriff.
Got two more questions.
Yes, sir.
We end on a good note. I want to ask this question about the jail in custody deaths. Is there anything that the agency is doing to address what appears to be, a growing number of jail deaths?
It's actually gone down, but what we have is some of the most unhealthy individuals living unhealthy lifestyles that end up in our facilities that, in a lot of cases, they're being transported because of pre-existing illnesses and they're passing away at the hospital in a lot of circumstances. We're not a medical facility, but Tariq, I promise you this. I bet if you go to, and I won't pick one, I'll say University, Memorial, I will say Mayo, people that are gravely ill, that are actually in the hospital, I bet they lose more. And they're equipped to deal with serious medical situations. We're not. So what we do is we find out that someone's sick, someone's dealing with a crisis, we try to get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. But that's why when we build a new facility, we want to put a clinic there and have clinicians and doctors come in to help us with that a little bit more. I think we've made some good strides, but I think there's more we're going to be able to do.
I've known you for a long time. I have a feeling that you don't see things in color as people.
Right.
You know? But when you put on your uniform, you get dressed, the sheriff of this great town,
yep.
the second African-American sheriff.
Yeah.
Is there a sense of, I guess, what is your sense when you think about history in the city, who you are, and for some people who may see color,
right,
see you as, you know, a historical figure in the city?
Right. I think of it, I don't typically look at things in that light. I really don't. That's just not, maybe it's my upbringing. But when I think about it, I'm extremely proud that the people of this county decided they would allow me to sit in such an amazing seat and do this job for them. What I look like on the outside, it really doesn't mean a lot, or I don't think a lot of it in those terms. But what I am proud of is that being the second one, that's awesome. It really is. And you know what it shows? It shows that Jacksonville is not a racist city. It shows that Jacksonville is a great place with great people. And it shows that it doesn't matter what you look like, as long as you're willing to come and grind and do the job and do it the right way and be accountable to the public, which is why I want to talk to you today. I was willing to do it yesterday. Be accountable to the public, be accountable to you guys. I'm good with it, 100%. Anytime you guys ask, I don't mind doing it, because I think it's important for people to know that I'm willing, ready to do what's necessary to make sure our city stays safe, and the best city, what I think, in the United States of America.